you lost weight only to gain it right back after returning to your routine? Did your diet work for someone else but not you? Rockin' That ID Life helps you understand your genetic makeup to find a lifestyle that fits your needs. Together, you and RockinThatIDLife.com can focus on your health and meet your goals today. That's RockinThatIDLife.com.
Center Ice Brewery is a proud sponsor of Let's Go Blues Radio. If you haven't heard, Center Ice Brewery beer is now exclusively available at beer stores around town, so make sure you pick some up on your next milk and eggs run. That's Center Ice Brewery. Please drink responsibly. Welcome to a special playoff post-game edition of Let's Go Blues Radio. It's Season 10, Episode 34, and episode number 352 all-time. We're the often imitated, never duplicated. We have the meats. We're the original St. Louis Blues hockey podcast. Special thanks to RockinThatIDLife.com and CenterIceBrewery.com for probably sponsoring the show. Please check them out. It's Monday, May 1st. We're broadcasting live on YouTube and Facebook to interact with the show. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube and Instagram. Just do a search for us. You'll find us. I'm Kurt Price. My co-host for tonight's big show are Bill Day and Jeff Ponder. And on the agenda for tonight, we'll be discussing Game 1 of the first-round matchup between the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild that just wrapped up a little bit ago. I want to say all those models from the experts that had the Wild heavily favored in this series kind of look silly right now, don't they?
Let's not talk about that yet. It's only Game 1.
So far, my friend.
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
They look silly when we saw them before.
I agree. Not only just because the Blues have dominated the regular season matchup and really since Berube's taken over, but
12-1-1.
I mean, anyone who really, really watched these two teams know they are so evenly matched that there's no – I don't even think – we sit here and say the Blues are heavily favored. They're not. There's no heavy favorite here. This is a damn good series.
I know. I agree. And I think if you're going to heavily favor any team, I would. I mean, if you have to pick one, I would. I mean, maybe I'm biased. I'm trying not to be. I'd pick the Blues. They're. I mean, of the stat categories, they have the edge in a lot of the categories. It's pretty close, but they do have the edge. And
if the series is called the way it was tonight, then they are running away with the series.
And the Wild just. I mean, it seems like they don't match up well against. They're a very good team. They're very close in a lot of stat categories against the Blues, but they just don't match up well against us. They can't. I'm not trying to sound cocky, but they have a hard time beating us. I mean, it's 13-1-1 in the last 15 matchups now.
Yeah, and just the power play, the special teams, right? The Wild is they put up what their home special team stats, and they're just god awful. So the Blues did exactly what they needed to do tonight, getting off, on the right foot with a huge lift from the power play. They took advantage of dumb penalties, and the Wild didn't take advantage of the penalties, and they paid.
There were some penalties.
There was that one by the bench, the holding call that was kind of bad, but I mean, it
was bad, but man, did you not laugh? I mean, come on, he literally took his stick and threw in the bench.
Yep.
So this matchup is a rematch of the Winter Classic earlier this season when the Blues won 6-4. And like we mentioned, just about every other model that you looked at prior to the Game 1 had the Wild heavily favored to win this series, which was interesting to me. Money Puck had the Blues 25% to win, the Wild 75%. Dom's model at the Athletic had the Wild heavily favored, and he was back. He was backing it up too and it was funny because people would ask, why with the Blues being 3-0-0 against the Wild this year, why are the Wild so heavily favored? And he's like, we don't factor in head-to-head matchups. Did you see that? And I'm like, I saw that. Why in the fuck don't you factor in matchups where the teams actually played each other when they're gonna play each other? That's weird to me.
I just realized both of you are wearing your glasses. I think I need to throw some on here, so let me give me a second here.
The googly kind with the eyes falling out?
No, I've got the Rick Vaughn kind
from
nice. Wild Thing.
Nice.
Very nice. Now it's the smartest Blues hockey podcast, just because if you had the audio all the way turned down, we would just look smart.
That's right. People would look at this show and be like, "These guys really know what they're talking about."
And then they turn the volume up and they realize, oh no.
Oh no.
But these models are all based exclusively, almost exclusively on advanced stats. So I think, we'll see how the series goes. But so far so good for the Blues.
I get to a certain extent, not including the head-to-head to a certain extent, not completely dismissing it. But, regular season and playoffs are two different types of games.
But
when you factor in universally is not the right word, over time, multiple seasons, the Blues have had the Wild number. And I think you have to factor that in at least a little bit, that the Blues, whatever reason, their style is just pretty good against the Wild.
Right. When you build a model, you don't want to have too much recency bias in there, but you can't completely dismiss.
Right.
Like this isn't just complete recency, right? It goes back. I'm going to say it goes back to Magnus Pajärvi scoring the series clinching goal in overtime. And we have had a way to just control game. Well, not necessarily control games, but come out on the right end of things. And if this series stays with the amount of penalties that were called, it's going to favor the Blues, right? And that's another thing I don't get. Like, how do you heavily favor a team when there's one clear specialty team's giant in this series? I just don't get it.
And contrary to what people tend to think, where there are less penalties called in the playoffs since 2016, looked it up today, there have been more penalties called in the playoffs than in the regular season every season since 16. So,
and I got in an argument with someone about how, because it was about the Avalanche, how it was back when certain people were saying it doesn't matter what the Blues do because they're just going to lose to the Avalanche in round 2.
A lot of people said that.
And we all agreed that's ridiculous. You can't have that kind of thinking, but he made a comment about how, where I made a comment about, well, the Avs are yet to prove anything to me. And he's just like, oh, you can't factor in past series. Just look at, and then I said something like, well, the Blues' power play has been pretty good against the Avalanche. Oh, you can't factor in special teams. That's this guy.
You can't factor anything that works against my team. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here like, what? You can't. Well, there was less penalties in the postseason. Really? Nope. Yeah, 15 years ago that was the case. Yeah. Not anymore.
Right. Yeah, that had a conversation with someone on Twitter. They said, they thought that started when McDavid was complaining about not getting calls in the playoffs. But it actually started the year before McDavid made his first appearance in the playoffs with the Oilers. The penalties were for the first time in a while. Were called. There was a greater number of penalties called in the playoffs per game than in the regular season, and that went up. And actually, it took a dip, but still more than the regular season, the year McDavid played, and then it went back up again the year after and every year since. So, it's the penalties. If penalties are going to be called, that's a huge advantage for the Blues. And actually, there were 2 for 6 on the power play in this game, and they didn't even try. The last couple power plays, they were just killing time.
Oh no, right? No, that's that last or the second to last one. They would literally just get the puck in, try to work it to the corner, and then the Wild would swipe it out, and they would just lackadaisically go back and get the puck. Right. And it was clearly they were like, time just needs to tick down. We're ready for this game to be over. Let's get to game 2.
Yeah, and to have the luxury of putting your fourth line out there for the power play at the end of the game, and just to watch them tic-tac-toed around and play the 4 corners game. I mean, that does so much, I think, for the team, right? You reward your fourth line for playing the right way during the game, and it gives you're not going to have somebody out there for for the Wild to take liberties against your top line as the game winds down. Just awesome that we got into that position and took advantage of it.
Yeah, and for the people, the Minnesota fans that were, and I get it, it's part of being at a game, chanting that the referees suck, booing the refs. You had 6 power plays.
You had 6 power plays, yeah.
And you didn't do shit.
And they had, and the Blues, I mean, they had a lot before the Blues got many. The Blues scored on their first 2, but Minnesota had 4 or 5 before we even had a few there at the end. So I mean, they had plenty of chances to go up or tie the game.
And that was what I told the wife, was that it was seriously like the if you're going to say, well, the referees, they're controlling the game, they gave Minnesota every opportunity to get back into that game. And I'm not saying that the calls were bad. They were just calling everything. Minnesota had every chance to get back in that game.
Early on, I was like, man, they're calling everything. This is goofy.
It's hard for me. Actually, we'll talk. I know we're kind of jumping around right now, but like the Barbashev penalty shot, I thought that was weak. I actually thought that was a great defensive play.
Yeah, that was his first. That official. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
that was his very first penalty call in his very first playoff game that he officiated.
Oh wow! Well,
was
there
a
you
penalty
go.
shot.
That was weak. I thought that was very weak. And then there was just a couple other that are kind of ticky tack. I'll say, though, I think most of the penalties in that game were warranted, but I would like to see them. And again, with the Blues special teams being the way it is, yes, huge advantage Blues when it's a game like that. But man, I wanted to see more 5-on-5. I feel like there was a lot of penalties that disrupted flow of the game, and man, I just wanted to see those teams go at it.
I really didn't, because I thought when it got to 5-on-5, Minnesota dominated for large portions of that game. Right? They brought the pressure every time they had 5-on-5 and were able to get 2 consecutive shifts. Right? It just, that was a little scary.
I thought the first period especially, they were coming at us, and we looked sloppy as shit in our own end. Mishandling our exits were terrible. Mishandling passes, miscommunication, unable to clear on chances they could clear, trying to make a move and clear the zone as opposed to just dumping it out. And it happened a lot, and that got better in the second period. That they cleaned that up in the second period a little better. But in the first period, I didn't like the way the Blues played, even though they were winning. Going to the second, I thought they played poorly on their own end, and I thought Husso saved the day a few times, and it saved the day in this game. Without Husso in net, I hope people watching this game that were wanting Binnington to play watched this game and understood why right-thinking kinds of Blues fans, wanted Husso in net. This was why. This is what he's bringing. So far so good with Husso.
Right.
You can't argue with the results now. I mean, that's something I said to my wife, who's a big Binnington fan. I'm like, you look. It was like third period. I'm like, you think anyone else should have started this game than Ville Husso? And she just didn't really say anything. Like, that's my answer.
Did you see Dan Riley's poll on Twitter? He had 100 and some responses from Blues fans on social media. Most said Binnington. I was like, what? What are you guys looking at? I mean, I know Binnington's been better his last half dozen games or so, but Jesus, I mean, the body of work, and if you just watch the two, but Binnington's games were mostly against softer teams, easier teams, and the one good team he played against was Colorado. Didn't look good against that team. So I mean.
Yeah, the way this season shaped up, it had to be Husso for game one.
Had to be.
Right. And then, if he gets shellacked, maybe I was saying you give them 2 games, and if he doesn't win a game, then you go to Binnington. And I asked my buddy Ryan in Minnesota, like, what do you think with, on your side? I told him what I thought in terms of Binnington only coming in the third game if Husso's bad in the first 2. Asked him, what about Fleury and Talbot? When do you see the switch to Talbot? And he said that everybody that he heard on sports talk radio thought Talbot was getting the start tonight.
I thought he would too.
I thought he would.
So I would not be surprised if on the other end, Talbot's in game 2.
I guarantee
not that Fleury didn't have a good game. He had a decent game, just too many power plays. But I think
he made a ridiculous. I'm sorry. I was going to say he made a ridiculous save right before Perron's third goal. I mean, insane lunging save. He played great.
I'd bet money that Talbot plays in game 2.
Yeah, I mean, Fleury, that the penalty shot save on Barbashev, that, I mean,
It was
what goalie stands up on a penalty shot these days,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That was awesome.
I think with Minnesota's tendency to alternate starts down the stretch with those two, and the fact they lost game one, didn't play poorly. Minnesota, I thought they played pretty good for most of the game. The Husso just outperformed Fleury, and Fleury wasn't that bad either. But they lost 4-0, and I think Talbot is a nice shakeup for the team. Just to switch.
Tell me if you've or stop me if you've heard this one before. The difference in this game was special teams and Ville Husso.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
I mean that was the difference. If it wasn't for if this was a non-penalty filled game and Ville Husso has an average night, it's a much different conversation.
Yeah. And I mean, and the Blues may lose this game.
Yeah.
Minnesota played, and it's not, and shots on goal. Minnesota outshot us, but it wasn't uncommon for the Blues to get outshot this season, because they do kind of do quality over quantity as far as shots go. So, getting outshot by 5-10 shots in a game isn't a huge deal. It's kind of the overall flow of the game and how it's going, but which you look at, which Minnesota, like you said, Bill, had that early in the game, especially in the first period. They had the Blues on their heels at times in their own zone, and the Blues had trouble getting out, and it was pissing me off because they get the puck and then they would flub the pass or unable to clear or mishandle, and then Minnesota would come right back in. So the Wild at home at the Xcel Energy Center this season were 31-8-2, and this is the Blues' first time playing in the Xcel Energy Center, because which is dumb. I mean, we played them 3 times. They're a division rival. We should be playing them like 6 times. It's crazy.
That is a great. You said that, and I thought, no, they had one road game, but
their home game was
the Winter Classic.
The Winter Classic, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's so stupid.
It's dumb.
Jeez.
And even if it wasn't the Winter Classic, even if it was just in the Xcel Energy Center, that's just one game, and they're a division rival.
Yeah, and again, you've got 3 games against certain teams in the Pacific Division as well. Take those games away, give us more games against the Central Division.
Do one home, one away for the Pacific. Whatever. Since arriving in Minnesota at the deadline, Fleury was 9-2-0 with a 2.74 goals against average, a 9.10 save percentage. Talbot, since the trade, was 8-0-3 with a 2.25 GAA and a 9.25 save percentage. He just couldn't beat the Blues. He was good. He was really good against everybody else, which was probably factored into why he didn't play, because the Blues hadn't seen Fleury in net with Minnesota. We kind of lit him up in Chicago. His GAA in Chicago was over 3 when we faced him in those 3 games. And if you factor in this game, it goes up. So that's another reason why I think Talbot goes in net. I mean, is Talbot can't beat us, but Fleury's doesn't look any better as far as like number of goals allowed. I thought he looked, like you guys said, he looked pretty good. He wasn't. And I think for
the most part, Talbot's been fine against the Blues too. The Blues have they find the holes in Minnesota's defense, and they put the shot where they need to.
Yeah, the one goal I didn't like Fleury giving up was the O'Reilly goal. Over.
That was weak.
Slid over.
Yeah.
I agree. We talked about special teams. The Blues, 27%, franchise best, second best in NHL, 29 or second best in NHL, 29.4 on the road, which is number 1 in NHL. The Wild, their power play is 18th. It's at 20.7%, and the PK, the Blues own that too. Pretty big difference. 5th, 84.1%, and the Wild are 76.1, which is 25th. So if special teams have a say in this series, that heavily favors the Blues. Put that in your model.
Yeah. Tell me that, again, we Bill and I both already said this. If this series is called at all the way game 1 was called, this could be a very quick series. I mean, the Blues will just dominate special teams if that continues.
What did you guys in your brackets, what'd you pick for the series?
I got Blues in 6.
Yeah,
No?
I did too.
I have Blues in 5.
Mm.
I think I commented on Twitter just to be an ass. I said Blues in 5, 6 if they get bored. So first period. A couple.
Well, hang on before we get into that.
Yeah.
I just want to add real quick for those that are you. We've had people commenting, asking about our beers of the show and all that.
Okay.
We'll do a quick programming note. Well, I was just going to add that this is a very quick post game show because it is late. And we are actually going to do a second show this week. So if you're listening live, especially, be ready. We will have a show on Thursdays. That's between games 2 and 3. So this is a very quick. We wanted to get something out, for you Blues fans wanting to talk after game 1. And then we'll have something after game 2 as well.
Yeah, we didn't want to wait until game 2 to have our show. So, and Wednesday didn't work out for all of us. So, our normal show, which Wednesday would have been good, but schedules were goofy. So Thursday it is, and just wait until game 2 because you want to talk about this game, right? Because what if they lay an egg in game 2? Then you're down doing a show. Let's get one good show in here at least.
Exactly.
You
guys, I will say, you guys are drinking something special though. Why don't you go ahead and share real quick what they are?
Oh yeah, well, I think I should go first.
You should.
That's fine.
Bud Light Orange.
Oh, nice.
My goodness.
Break it.